Hello, people. How's it going? Well, this is take two after trying to figure out a few things. I think I may have figured out how to make the picture a lot nicer. I needed more light, not less. Apparently, I'm just a content creator trying to figure this out. But anyway, I think I might have figured it out. This looks nicer. This looks clearer. I don't have that glare, so I should have been turning that light on, or that light on. Keep forgetting the camera's turning. Anyway, um, I think people. I understand why some people like to try to defend the authors they like. There are authors I like that I think are reprobates. I'm sorry, Jack London was a racist. You read about Jack London's life, and this man, yeah, he was a white supremacist. He was a lot of things, but he wrote brilliantly. So what does a person do? Do they continue reading his stuff? A lot of his stuff also was pretty bad too, but a lot of his stuff was good. Or do you just ignore the fact that the man was what he was and move on? Now, I get the idea of defending one's authors that they like. That's human, that's normal, that's a good thing. Defend their work. Defend what they did as a writer in their creations. I mean, you name me a writer who didn't have some sort of flaw somewhere, or some author who didn't have some sort of dark past or present or future. You name me any author who was perfect, and I'll prove you wrong. But the most interesting writers are those people who are a little imperfect. I mean, H.P. Lovecraft, he was a bundle of neuroses, prejudices, and a few other things. But he was a brilliant horror writer. I mean, I discovered his stuff in my late 40s, I believe. I believe I discovered his stuff in my late 40s. I would have discovered him sooner, but I didn't. I mean, he was a man of his time. He was also a product of his upbringing. He was also what he was. You can still like his stuff. You don't have to defend every single thing the man did or didn't do. I mean, no author is perfect. Hemingway was a drunk, a womanizing drunk, but his short stories and novels were wonderful, were brilliant. I mean, we seem to be living in the age of we have to, defend or something the authors and their past over their writing. Oh, why? They're dead. Most of these authors that people are complaining about are dead. They can't come back. They can't defend themselves. They can't come back and defend themselves and explain themselves. And they can't even change their attitudes, and they probably would if they knew now what they know now. If they knew then what they know now. I mean, I think the idea that we have to defend the authors we like because there's something about their private lives that we don't agree with or we find distasteful or the society today just cannot handle because it might trigger us. Well, okay. There are very few authors I can mention that we should, not think very highly of them at all for what they wrote. That Austrian guy in Germany, who took over Germany, who wrote Mein Kampf. Yes, Adolf. Are we supposed to? I mean, he's probably one of those very few exceptions where you can say, yeah, what he wrote and who he was trash. No getting around that. But eh, you have to take an author from what time he lived in. You have to take what kind of upbringing he had. I think the problem with today is we're triggered by everything. Oh, we find the smallest, minute little things about anybody and everybody, and all of a sudden, everybody's triggered by some word they used. I hate telling you this, there's a lot of popular authors who use the N word quite a lot and have magical you know whats quite a lot. And no one ever seems to criticize them about this, and nobody ever questions it. Why not? Stephen King is a brilliant writer most of the time. I like his short stories more than I like his novels. Just saying. But, we seem to want to criticize their private lives, which is fine. I mean, we have every right to. We are the reading public. We are the people who are sitting there buying their books or reading their material and passing judgment. I think my real problem is just these authors who are dead and long gone and dead, that somehow they should be forced to come back and explain themselves. Or we should just, throw their works out the window, or just only focus on their private lives or their, what they did behind closed doors when they weren't writing. If you want a perfect writer, you have a long way. You name me one writer without flaws, without character flaws, without personality flaws, without personal, moral, or ethical flaws. Good grief. Oh, Henry, William Sidney Porter, embezzled from the bank he was working for, spent time in prison. And he is considered one of the greatest short story writers ever. Are we supposed to throw all his stories out because he was a criminal, a felon? Of course not. We're supposed to say, okay, he did this and he picked up his life and he did something. He made a mistake. He committed a crime. He paid for that crime. I don't know. I guess I watch some videos and I watch sometimes and I'm thinking, you do not have to defend the author because the author just happened to be prejudicial. You don't have to defend your love of reading their material. You can't separate the person from the writing. In fact, you should. You should never, ever, ever, ever not separate. You should, at all times, separate the author from their work. Now, as I've said, there are certain authors, the Fuhrer, that you should not because he was a quack, he was a dangerous lunatic, and he got people killed. But I don't know. I'm trying to make this make sense, and I'm probably not. I should have written this down. But I don't know. I watch some videos, and I understand why they feel that they have to defend why they like a certain author. I don't think you need to defend it. It's an author you like. You like this author. You enjoy H.P. Lovecraft. And Howard. I think Wilson's getting his name. I forgot Howard's name. And this book's over there. Mr. Robert L. Howard. Okay, he wasn't perfect. He had his flaws. He didn't view everybody as equal. A lot of his fiction is not exactly, untriggering in this day and age. So, he was a man of his time. He wrote what he wanted to write. He wrote how he saw the world. And he was very good at what he did. He was a very good writer. I do like his horror stories. I know some people love his Conan stories, and yeah, they're okay. I prefer his horror stories. I just do. I don't know. I just do. I just find them far more better written, I suppose. I won't read all this stuff eventually. But, I mean, Robert E. Howard was a man of his time. H.P. Lovecraft was a man of his time. Ernest Hemingway was a man of his time, and he was a womanizing drunk. He also killed himself at the end of his life. When you want to drag him back out here and hold him accountable for all his sins? It doesn't work that way. I mean, the problem is, I think, really, we live in a day and age where everything is hyper focused on the negative of people, of authors, of artists, of actors, of this, that, and the other, of other people's political beliefs. We've become obsessed with tearing each other apart. We've become obsessed with trigger warnings and and just being absolutely apoplectic over words used in stories that, oh, no, I would never use that word. Oh, no, of course you wouldn't. The moment you start telling me that, I begin to wonder how many times have you used that word? You think you have to defend yourself that much? There's a problem. You're hiding something. I don't mind if my authors that I like are flawed. Hemingway was flawed. F. Scott Fitzgerald was flawed. Robert Howard was flawed. H.P. Lovecraft was flawed. Stephen King is flawed. Neil Gaiman, flawed. But you know what I think it is? I think the problem is that I'm sick and tired, I suppose, of this trigger warning, immediate trigger warning. All of a sudden, we got to be triggered by what? Things we can't change? We didn't write these stories, so why am I reacting to them? Don't read it now. Don't read it if it bothers you. Don't read about the author. Don't read his work. Just walk away. But we seem to have just become so hyper focused on words that trigger us. It's like, okay, he used those words we don't like. Well, we didn't live when he lived. We're not him. We don't think like him. We like his work. We don't have to agree with it. We don't even have to like it. But I just don't. I don't know. I just don't think people need to justify and defend their reason why they like a certain author, even if that author was an absolute white supremacist racist Jack London. Oh no, you read enough about Jack London, and you begin to wonder how they made the 1941 movie about Jack London and got away with it. You watch that film, you will not recognize Jack London. They have whitewashed him so badly that he's invisible. It is a bad movie. It is a terrible film. It is a bad film. Almost as bad as the Babe Ruth story. Also written in 1940, 49, somewhere around there. That's bad. I just don't think people need to defend the authors they like. If you like an author, and yeah, he has a dark history or he has troubling beliefs in his past, well, that's his problem, not yours. Well, that's if you're trigger warning on something you cannot change, the author's long gone and dead, gone on to stand before God as a judge, and so on and so forth, you need to just stop it. Don't read them anymore. It's going to bother you that much. Don't read it. I mean, I read Jack London short stories because I like a lot of his stories. He was a very good writer, but as a human being, he wasn't a very nice guy. Just wasn't. That's a shame. I grew up on his stuff as a kid. I enjoyed his work as a kid. The more I began later in life, when I read biographies about him, I realized, okay, I like your work, Jack, but you have issues. You have some serious problems. I mean, I did. As a kid, I liked Jack. I like Kipling. I still like Kipling. Yeah, and Kipling was an imperialist. Kipling was a lot of things. There was a lot of good, the bad, and the ugly. Why what it says on my thing there. Because that's what makes every writer what they are. It makes a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, a little bit of ugly. You name me one writer where they don't have a little bit of all of those in their history. But I like Jack London as a writer. As a person, not so much. I find Ernest Hemingway, actually, I find Ernest Hemingway far more interesting than I find what he wrote. And I love his short stories. Robert E. Howard, I find Robert E. Howard interesting. I read the book, I read his biography, I read a biography of his. I found him very interesting. I need to find more books on him. He wasn't perfect, but he was a brilliant writer. He was probably the greatest book writer there was. He knew what he was doing. He knew his audience. And he liked writing what he wrote. I mean, it's sad how his life ended. I kind of understand those feelings, but it's sad how he ended. And it's tragic how he ended. Who knows what he could have written if he just kept on going? You know, I mean, I've said it before. You name me one writer who doesn't have dark things in his past, who doesn't have those moments that they may regret if given a second chance. I mean, I get it. I understand the need to think you need to defend an author you like. I don't think you need to. I don't think anybody needs to defend an author they like. If you look, Anne Rice. Okay, if you like Anne Rice, that's cool. I think she's boring. I think she's boring. I tried to read Interview with a Vampire, and I'm sorry. I got tired of the whining of the vampire. I got tired of the whining. If you like her writing, cool. Enjoy. Don't worry about my opinion. My opinion's of no relevance to your opinion. But, you know, I guess my whole point is that if you feel the need to defend an author because somewhere in their life they were this, whatever word you want to use, trigger word you want to use, why? You like their writing. It's not them you mostly like. You may like them as a person, you may like their lives, but you mostly like what they write. And that's what it really should be about. That's what liking an author should be about. It shouldn't be about just, and I've said it before, I keep saying I know it. It's this obsession, hyper obsession with trigger warnings and the past and how they lived their lives and what they believed. And it's like, you know what? You weren't there, and neither was I. Would we have been any different if we had been there? It would have been a different culture. It would have been a different time. Our thoughts would have been different. I have no idea what I would have been like if I had been alive in the 1920s and 30s, any more than anybody else is criticizing writers at that time. I mean, I get it. I do. Because the authors I've named, I get. They weren't perfect. They had their sins. They had their foibles. They had their prejudices. They had their things that we really wish they didn't have, but they did. But we enjoy their work. That really is the bottom line. If they wrote something we really enjoy, we really should say, okay, I don't like what they believe personally, but I like their work. It's not a bad thing. It's nothing to apologize for. But I don't think anybody should apologize for it. I just don't think they should. If you like the authors I mentioned, well, good. Enjoy their work. That's probably all they really would want you to be or do is enjoy what they wrote and not really pay attention to them and as the people, unless, of course, you're J.D. Salinger, who tries to hide who he is, only to make the problem worse. And that's a whole different other story. It's a different story. JD. But anyway, I don't know. I understand the need. I understand the feeling to defend what we like as readers. I just don't think it's necessary. Maybe necessary, but not to the extent that we think it is. I like this author. Yes, I don't agree with this author in a lot of things, but I like their work. Case closed. Conversation over. If you don't like it, well, sorry, I like what they write. I enjoy what they write. But we live in a very hypersensitive, hyper trigger warning world, and unfortunately, and this is the way it works. I mean, reading should be fun. Reading really should be an enjoyment. There should be authors that we like, and we shouldn't have to feel obligated to defend whatever dark secrets they may or may have harbored, or what prejudices they may have harbored, or anything else for that matter. And I've rambled on long enough. I'm on 20 minutes already. And I really don't like making these videos too long. But anyway, thank you for watching. Someone keeps coming on and on. I think the picture is working a little better. I think I may have figured out one of the problems rather than fix it. So it's an obvious fix. Sometimes the obvious is me. Anyway, thank you. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Behave yourselves, people. You know I'm not going to. See you later. See you later.